Lawyers of Reddit, what are interesting loopholes that make you burn out? Story 1. I am a public defender. I am the vanguard of justice. I am the bulwark against tyranny. I am a hoot at dinner parties. I am this author's Tinder bio. I am venerated by the new progressive zeitgeist. I am the corporeal manifestation of professional burnout. I am useless. So completely useless. There's a dull reality to my job, which is that my clients have almost always done the thing they're accused of doing. And usually the evidence against them is overwhelming, not even a close call. Yet I am duty-bound to poke, prod, and bluff my way into exaggerating a weakness with the government's case. This usually doesn't work. For example, one time a client was picked up for his 6th drunk driving incident. He had been prohibited from driving eons ago, but that hadn't stopped him before. In addition to driving under the influence, DUI number 6, he was charged with fleeing the scene after crashing into another car. The fleeing was ineffectual, if only for the fact that he literally imprinted his license plate number onto the other car. I saw the picture of the imprint, with a mirrored alphanumeric sequence perfectly legible on the metal body. Cops found his car billowing thick black smoke in a parking lot in front of a nearby AutoZone. My client hadn't gotten far from the scene. He was in the driver's seat, having already passed out and urinated his pants. So yeah, when I meet with clients I shrug a lot and give the "what do you want me to do" look. I try to shift delicately into the gentle social worker persona and talk about damage control, which invariably means telling them that accepting a plea deal is the least bad option. This is one reason why almost everyone chooses to plead guilty. 94% of state cases and 97% of federal cases are resolved by a plea deal, to be exact. All this means I inhabit a different role than you may think based on TV shows or the occasional op-ed about the noble role of public defenders. I'm not a special agent who parachutes into the enemy hideout to orchestrate and negotiate an elaborate hostage release. I'm just the widget inspector. I'm there to sit at the assembly line with a checklist on a clipboard and make sure that my clients' rights are not violated too much throughout the process. And we literally used a checklist for DUI cases. 6 pages of potential rakes we could only pray a cop stepped on. Yes, you have video of the guy swerving all over the road. His speech is as slurred as mud, and he has a small cargo ship's worth of empty beer bottles in the back. But was the temperature of the liquid simulator solution utilized as the external standard for the breath sample machine measured by a thermometer which was properly certified by the state at the time? It doesn't happen often, but occasionally the cops do mess up. Sometimes they don't notice the thermometer certification lapsed 2 days prior, and of course you pounce on that. But this almost never happens, and it also underscores how fungible my own contributions are. Anyone plausibly qualified could replace me, and it would not make a difference for the most part. I'm borderline useless, in other words. But there are terrifying exceptions to this rote monotony that forever haunt me. Like the one time I cast a spell in court with 11 magic words. This happened early, when I was still a baby public defender. My client, different from license plate man above, was an immigrant from Mexico. He was already on probation for 1 DUI when he was caught driving drunk a second time, 7 years after the first. A judge released him from jail provided that his family fork over a small ransom for bail, and that he agree to having his whereabouts monitored by an ankle bracelet. He would have to come back to address his probation issues in 2 weeks. The ankle bracelet company sends me an update a few days later. My client had visited their office, informed them that he intended to flee the country because he was scared of jail, then underscored his statement with a flourish by taking out a knife and cutting off the ankle bracelet in front of them. In terms of the ratio between effort and impact, this was easily one of the simplest ways he could have irreparably ruined his own situation. But I did not have time to dwell on this. His actions meant I had one less client to worry about, since clearly he had decided to take his chances on the lam rather than in court. 2 weeks pass and I'm in court. Just a normal day. I review the sign-in sheet to see which defendants of the cases I had prepped did me the courtesy of showing up. Our caseloads aren't always as bad as... Story 2. Yes and no. There's never been a case where I felt like it was too much to handle or anything like that. However, there have been plenty of instances where I felt somewhat shady after winning. For instance, there have been literally dozens of times where I have won motions to suppress on cases involving illegal substances where the police violated any or all of my clients' First, Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment rights. Generally, after winning a motion to suppress, the case goes away and the client goes free, with literally a get-out-of-jail-free card. Sometimes, those clients use that opportunity to their benefit, and they make something better of their lives. And the fact that they don't have a felony on their records means that they can make something better of their lives. But, in other cases, I see those same people who I won motions for right back in my office, be it 6, 12, or 18 months later, and that's an absolute killer for my psyche. Story 3. Lawyers of Reddit. What is the weirdest legal loophole that you've had to fight against or use to your advantage? Colorado's Make My Day law. I was a prosecutor in a small ski town. One of my regular customers was a problematic person who fought with everyone, stole things in broad daylight, and generally made a nuisance of himself. How he got a girlfriend, I'll never know. But he did, and his GF had a roommate who was breaking up with her boyfriend, another troublemaker who was not taking the breakup well. One morning, ex-boyfriend stuck his head into his ex's apartment and informed her that he was coming in and that she needed to not break up with him or there would be hell to pay. Then he forced his way in. Problematic person was there with the roommate. He clopped troublemaker from behind with a sawed-off baseball bat he keeps with him at all times. Troublemaker dropped like a stone. Then problematic person got the bit in his teeth and proceeded to kick unconscious troublemaker in the head. He can't even remember how many times. Skull fractures galore. The cops handed this mess over to me, and I became acquainted for the first time with Colorado's brand spanking new Make My Day law. So well written. I had to explain to my sheriff and chief of police that this time problematic person walks. The unwise Colorado legislature had declared that if someone breaks into your home, announces that he is there to commit a felony, you can do anything you want to him. Saw off his head with a rusty hacksaw. It's all good. He doesn't have to be a continuing danger to you, just inside the curtilage of the residence. He doesn't even have to be conscious. Have fun. Be inventive. It's a freebie. John Gacy it up. Some harm, no foul. I would have been more upset if I hadn't been sure. Problematic person would be back on my plate, and sure enough, he went off to the state pen eventually. But not for attempted harm. Story 4. You probably never will be happy as a lawyer. Law school really wasn't very indicative of what it would be like to be a lawyer, because law school was about learning specific things that were all lined out to make sense. In general, as a lawyer, you are going to be filtered down to a specific subset of some legal subject and you will be expected to become an expert in that area. You may like it, you may not. None of your bosses will care. All they want is a minion to learn it and live it so that they can make money from your expertise. Become the firm's expert in trusts and estates, and then just try and get them to let you to go become a litigator. They will laugh at you before saying no, because they invested time and money into you becoming a trust and estate whiz that brings in the billables. No way. They will want to let you do anything else, whether you are bored or not. Even if you are our partner, they won't want you to do anything new. The reality is, if I look at the classmates I graduated with 20 years ago, the majority are no longer practicing lawyers. I know very few that are loving life as a lawyer, a few that went into legal education and they seem to be happy. But actual lawyers that are happy is a very short list. You might want to look into corporate jobs where your legal background would be considered of value, such as regulated industries, utilities, pipelines. Those types of companies often want people that can understand government regulations, and sometimes the Juris Doctor JD is just a plus and not a requirement, such that the job isn't being a lawyer per se. Sadly, billables in those jobs can still exist. I worked in one company where they required everyone to track hours because different pipelines had different tariffs, and the costs of any administrative overhead needed to be tracked and allocated to the appropriate pipelines. So don't think you'll necessarily get away from tracking your hours. You just won't be expected to bill out thousands per year. Just track which operating unit each hour of your day gets you. Story 5. Title pretty much sums it up. I graduated from a top 10 law school with very little debt due to scholarships and some early savings. In terms of outcomes, I ended up far better off than most people who enter the legal profession. But I hate what I do. By the way, if you're thinking about law school and are not completely 100% climb over barbed wire enthusiastic about this line of work, don't go. Seriously, you will regret it. Anyway, I work in civil litigation, and I despise it. I'm tired of the pathological personalities, their self-righteousness, their grandiosity, the overall meaninglessness of the work, document discovery, and the annoying procedural minutiae that never seem to cease popping up. Did I mention that the hours are horrific too? The problem is, of course, the classic one. The money is good. I'm a 29 years old male, early in my financial independence retire early fire journey, and while I've maxed out my 401k retirement savings plan for 2 years running and have nearly 6 figures stashed in a Roth, I'm still trying to build up a larger emergency fund and begin taxable investing. I know that the general recommendation is to try and stick it out, but I'm not sure how much longer I can take this job from a psychological standpoint. Current savings rate, SR, is around 65%. I only began focusing on fire in the past year or so. Is it worth making the jump to a different career? I'm not sure how translatable my skills are. I would be open to doing corporate/transactional law, but those jobs may be difficult to get since my resume is so litigation-focused. I also enjoy finance, but I have no formal quantitative background, so those jobs may also be out. Or should I suck it up, push myself through for as long as possible, and take a sabbatical when I eventually burn out to evaluate my options at that time? Are there any, perhaps older, wiser people here who face similar choices and are willing to offer advice? Story 6. I was you 8 years ago. I left after my 6th year of litigation at a big firm when I decided I needed to be human again, whatever the cost. So yes, you can do it. I had about $200K saved between 401k retirement savings plans / investments / savings / proceeds from selling a condo. I wasn't nearly as fire-driven as I am today, or I think I could have put more away. Yes, I was somewhat guilty of lifestyle creep. So having been through it and recently landed in a really good place, I just want to emphasize to you that it's hell, but you are building very marketable skills. When I quit, I traveled, then ended up just getting regular work as a lowly contract attorney to cover my bills and not dig into my savings. However, was eventually able to network and found a new job as a consultant in a large bank, making more than I did as a senior associate. Oh, and health insurance, because that was a big monthly bill for me and likely to get worse. Now I actually do work I like that I'm well compensated for, and my schedule is a very normal and doable 40 hours. It just took some patience to find a new path, and it took me 2.5 years, so please keep in mind once you get out of the game, it can be tough to get back in. So it might not be the legal work per se, but the litigation. It's cliché, but there really are tons of other options if you have a law degree and few to no student loans. I had them, which is why I hung in longer. I wish you luck. Feel free to private message PM me with any questions. I also recommend the book, Way Worse Than Being a Dentist, for some commiseration. Story 7. I was a litigation associate in big law for 8 years, then got out to do something completely different, coding. Here's advice. Forget fire. Leave law immediately. You're only 29. You have decades of productive years ahead of you. Find your passion. Find a way to make a living from it. Then worry about retiring early. I used to have a fire spreadsheet that I updated with every paycheck because I could not stand to be a lawyer for 1 second longer than necessary. Do you know what happened next? I got anxious and angry every time I fell behind the timeline, which was often marriage, childbirth, nice vacation, things that are supposed to be the highlights of your life. I only saw them as setbacks to my escape plan. I wasted years of my life being unhappy. Eventually, I realized that I had to make a change. I taught myself to code, quit my job, and now I'm a software engineer. I make less money, but I'm happier, and I'm still on track to retire early, just not as early as I would have if I'd stayed in law. Don't waste your life being unhappy. Get out now. Story 8. This hit home. I'm a 35-year-old lawyer too, made near big law bucks most of my career despite being a solo for half of it. I've represented a couple celebs and have some big cases in the Major League Baseball / National Football League MLB / NFL currently. Hate my life. Friends, family, and relationships have all fallen by the wayside. Every day is either a deadline, massive research / briefs, calls with ingrate clients, fights with OC, missing meals, workouts, sleep, most of life. Trust me, $500,000 won't make you like this job any more than you do now. I was far more happy making $60,000 at 25 than I am now. I'm thinking of hanging it up as soon as I resolve my current cases. Life's too short. I won't spend it doing something I hate. And as for you, don't focus on money so much. One thing I've learned is money is great for dealing with everyday problems and ordering food all the time, but the time and relationships you trade to earn it are invaluable. Story 9. I know this is a tale as old as time, but I could use some help right now. Too long. Didn't read. TLDR. I hate being a lawyer, and would love advice on getting out or finding a better fit. I've been practicing since 2018. 2019 if you don't count a clerkship, and I'm at a breaking point. I struggled with addiction and depression early in my career and got sober in 2020. Since then I've been practicing predominantly in the civil litigation arena, and absolutely loathe it. I did some corporate bankruptcy work and liked it, however it dried up and I was siloed back into lit. I hate the adversarial nature, I hate the hours. I hate the unreasonable demands from clients and partners. I hate the fact that every morning there is someone else waking up whose goal is to undo everything I am working for. At work, I usually vacillate between anxiety, frustration, dread, and hopelessness. The only thing that is sometimes enjoyable is contract drafting, when the rare opportunity presents itself, brief writing, and some appellate work. Even then, the knowledge that an opposing party is going to come back and try to blow your arguments to hell saps the joy out of it. I've always gotten positive reviews and done well at my firms, even in a few toxic environments. I don't say that to brag. I don't think I am anything special. It just makes it harder to walk away. If I was a god-awful attorney, it would be easier to bail. I'm burnt out and don't want to keep living this way. I've gotten back to a very low point. I'm struggling to find the will to wake up in the morning. Incoming emails are accompanied by either anxiety or frustration with the conduct of an opposing party or, more often than not, a client. I don't want to go on anymore. The pay where I am is far below market and somewhat depressing given the workload. I like the people, but it is just wretched to go in every day and do the same miserable work. Part of me just wants to quit right now and walk into the sunset. I don't even enjoy the little things that used to bring me a modicum of happiness. I would love to know what some of you did to either get out of the law or get to a place where you were happy doing what you do. For what it's worth, my undergraduate background is in public policy. I love the idea of policy work and being in the political arena, but it seems as if there is no money there. Plus, everyone getting a Doctor of Philosophy, PhD, in humanities seems to think it was the biggest mistake of their life. Story 10. I've been a lawyer now for 15 years and I'm totally burned out. I've worked for other firms and hated the income ceiling among all the other usual stressors. Then I built my own successful law practice grossing over $1 million per year every year. But I'm not happy, I'm not satisfied, and I'm totally burned out. Every client interaction feels like I'm dealing with an enemy who could stab me in the face or in the back. They are dumb humans, annoying, demanding, and ungrateful. I work on a contingency fee, and they demand I call them whenever they want to talk. And then if I actually cave in and speak to them, then they misinterpret and misunderstand the verbal information I convey, which is why I always insist on written communication. I get a huge and fair settlement on the table, and they not only reject it but then attack me. Anyway, I am so burned out. This amazing income and empire I've built doesn't seem worth it to me anymore. I only have one life to live, and this doesn't seem like the best life. Trying to figure out when and how to walk away from this entire profession of conflict. I just want to feel like I'm not alone. That's the purpose of my vent and post. Story 11. This is my first foray into Reddit, and I am a recently retired attorney, age 73. I practiced 45 years, mostly as self-employed practitioner. I went into and out of several small firms. My practice was as a litigator focusing on jury trials, civil and criminal. My experience with burnout was not as bad as most of what I see in the other posts. I followed these guidelines. 1. Take Friday afternoon off work and get some exercise. I hiked a 3-mile strenuous loop in the woods. This sets the stage for a refreshing weekend. 2. Store up projects that involve passive reading and do it at home or in some quiet environment. This heightens efficiency and it becomes actually enjoyable if you can focus, think, and react without petty interruptions. 3. Make all phone calls at a particular time of day and get them all racked off in an hour or so. Make sure you are not interrupted. 4. Make friends with other lawyers, men and women, who do the same kind of work and meet them for lunch or beers at least once a month. Talk shop. It's food for your spirit, and the quality of your work goes up because you learn stuff. 5. Go to trial as often as possible. This raises your standing as a lawyer, regardless of whether you win or lose. And it makes the discovery process much more focused because you can zoom in on the good stuff, i.e., materials that mean something in the courtroom. 6. Don't work in a firm that treats you like a tool, i.e., 200 billable hours a month or whatever. This is a heart attack machine, to paraphrase Bob Dylan. 7. Learn from older or more successful attorneys. They are usually quick to share their habits and secrets. Lawyers love to yak, especially about themselves. 8. Treat. Story 12. I left practice altogether and got a job in communications with the state bar. My first week, my team, nobody else was a lawyer, had a serious, intense discussion about what color background to use on a new email newsletter. I had to bite my tongue to keep from grinning. It's not challenging and it's a massive pay cut, but I'm not waking up in a cold sweat at 2:30 a.m. either, and other parts of my life are so much richer. Now I'm trying to transition into membership society work that has absolutely nothing to do with the practice of law. Story 13. I am in the same boat. I loved law school, and I do really enjoy research/writing, legal analysis, working cases up, and collaboration with other lawyers and professionals. But something about the culture feels really toxic. I've always been in private practice at smaller firms, but even outside of big law, I just feel like lawyers and the legal profession generally is so ego and status-driven. I've never wanted to be well-known, nor have I ever wanted to work on behalf of the capitalist class in general. After starting out doing medical malpractice defense and other personal injury PI stuff for a couple of years, I've made my way in the criminal defense arena, a lot of white-collar and qui tam stuff, again, a lot involving doctors. I've managed to make a decent living, doing things that I feel morally good about for the most part, but I suffered from imposter syndrome and definitely didn't pursue success on the level that so many attorneys seem to thrive on. I should have demanded better compensation in the last decade or so, but to be honest, I was on autopilot as a single parent and widow. A lot of personal trauma/baggage from growing up in pretty extreme dysfunction. I got completely burned out and felt like I was at a dead end professionally. I kinda was. Working for an aging solo practitioner who wasn't a great mentor, and in litigation knowing that trial work is not something I truly enjoy. I felt like I had screwed my whole life and career up, so I screwed it up even more. LOL. I started studying Spanish because I always loved it and left it behind in college. And I joined a volunteer program to teach English in Central America. So I just, this year, quit my job and left everything behind for 2 years. I don't know if I did a great thing or an incredibly stupid thing. I am pursuing a dream I had for a long time, and my job was not going to be there forever, so the timing was okay in some ways. But there are days when I have a mini panic attack about going home and being in my 50s and unemployed, no health insurance, no house, not much retirement, and no great desire to go back to what I was doing. My vague plan is to go to criminal appeals panel appointment work, do some online teaching with a paralegal program I've been involved with, and try to parlay my Spanish skills, hopefully improve to a high advanced level after 2 years, into doing something to help immigrant communities. Not even necessarily doing immigration law, although I'm interested. I might just continue doing informal English conversation instruction for free / for tamales and frijoles, whatever. I'm tired of feeling bad about myself for not wanting to be part of the rat race, and I want to do what interests and gratifies me as a person. I understand I have skills as a lawyer that are valuable, which makes me feel responsible to use them for good, not to enrich some other person or myself. I think this counts as a midlife crisis. Lol. I don't know. I feel pretty lost, but I hope I can turn it all into a decent, stable, and meaningful life, and to make peace with it all. Story 14. I am a lawyer, but most of the loopholes I've actually encountered are pretty uninteresting. So instead, I'm going to introduce a theoretical legal loophole involving drunk driving that we discussed in one of my law school classes. Actually, I did think of one that's kind of noteworthy, so I added it as well. Theoretical drunk driving defense. While most urban legends suggest keeping batteries, pennies, or gum in your car in case you get stopped, a theoretical approach discussed in class involved simulating post-stop intoxication in a controlled, legal discussion. The idea is that after being stopped, you could show that any alleged intoxication occurred after the stop, not while driving. The purpose of this thought experiment is to understand arguments about timing and reasonable doubt in court, not my pants possession defense. This also involves controlled substances in a legal context. Early in my law career, I prosecuted substance-related cases, so I became familiar with the principle that a person cannot be convicted for possessing substances unless they knew, or ought to have known, they were present. So if someone claims the items were in pants that were not theirs, this could theoretically be a defense. In practice, it was rarely successful because there are ways to prove knowledge, such as possession of personal items with the clothing or wearing the clothing at the time. Story 15. I got the physical evidence, a bag of controlled substances, thrown out because the officer reached into my client's pocket before patting the outside first. Because that was the only evidence that my client committed a crime, the prosecutor was forced to dismiss the entire case. Story 16. There really aren't loopholes like that, where people dramatically win a case in court based on a word in a statute no one else read or whatever it is you're thinking of. Closest thing I can think of. I knew of a criminal defense attorney that had a slight foreign accent. When he had a lost cause of a case, in court he would sometimes play up the accent heavily, pretend to understand less English than he really did, generally played dumb, etc. This was juxtaposed with one of the best prosecutor offices in the country, who are all very polished. His hope was the jury might feel sorry for his client and acquit him even if they thought he was guilty because it felt like he never had a fair shot. It was a fine line to walk to do that and not piss off the judge though, lol. Story 17. I recently graduated law school and started working at a non-profit firm providing free legal services to low-income individuals. I always wanted to work in either government or non-profit, as I always believed in St. Thomas, principles of helping others. However, it has turned to be a complete headache. The clients are driving me nuts. The main problem is the walk-ins. They walk in every day without appointments and expect me to stop what I am doing to help them. One who expected me to stop during my appointment I had with another client to help her. I will have up to 5 walk-ins in one day. The problem with the constant walk-ins is that the receptionist speaks English and does not speak Spanish, so if they walk in, I have to be the one who speaks to them. With the constant walk-ins, I have to be a part-time receptionist. The constant walk-ins burn me out by the end of the day. Additionally, it is hard for me to get the other work I have done if I have to play receptionist all day. My second problem is how many no-show appointments I have. I can understand if somebody calls and cancels in advance because of work schedules fluctuate and I'm usually understanding, but some literally do not show up. 2 or 3 times. It's frustrating because it not only delays finishing up their case, but it takes time away that I could be helping another person. The third problem is when I give them a list of documents they need to bring to the next appointment in order to do the next part, and they don't bring them, and then they have to come back multiple times to finish. I have assignments that should have finished in one day that take 2 months to finish. It makes the process completely slow, and all the extra time I am taking to finish these cases, it makes the entire system slow. It's complete inefficiency, and it makes the job not just hard but frustrating. I am always burnt out by the end of the day. Lastly, while most of my clients are wonderful, some of them are rude. One lady sucked her teeth at me when I told her that it was out of my job description to get her an InfoPass appointment. I'd have to get up at 5 a.m. to try to get her an open slot. I called another lady back and she said, "It took you guys that long to call me back?" I'm putting 110% in my cases and put hours and hours in a case to make sure they get the best representation. So it is shocking that my effort is so undervalued to them. Maybe I was naive to think there would always be some form of appreciation because a private lawyer would cost thousands of dollars, money that they cannot afford. Any advice on how to go about with pro bono clients and serving a low-income population? Update. Thanks for the responses. I have been thinking about this all night, and it really opened my eyes. Now that I think about it, some of my clients are not just poor, but the poorest of the poor. They are adults, but in reality they're like children. The social norms that we know about appointments, etc., they may not have had the opportunity to learn. With all that in mind, I am starting to believe I am not cut out for his, no matter how good my intentions are. I am burnt out after only 3.5 months. My only concern is, if and when it is time for me to leave, who helps these people? And if people are constantly leaving nonprofit, who helps these people? Story 18. I've always envied how lawyers can remain so cool and confident at what they do. Not to be a downer, but I can barely get over an argument without getting flustered and thinking about it a lot afterward. This still happens to attorneys, especially in more dramatic areas of practice. One part they're probably never prepared for is the stress, burnout, or anxiety from the challenging workload. It's one of those you can never truly be prepared until you experience it things. I was warned all throughout law school that stress and anxiety are the two major causes of early onset heart and mental problems in attorneys, but there's just no way to fully comprehend it until you are practicing. If you don't mind me asking, how have you dealt with it? I spend a lot of time relaxing and trying to take my mind off work. Having an adorable pet, dog, and wonderful spouse helps. Also, alcohol or recreational substances. Attorneys have extremely high rates of substance use and dependency. Maybe you have had good mental health so far. Can you share how you have been able to maintain that? See above. Also, for me at least, chronic apathy. The attorneys who seem to be the least stressed out usually are the most jaded and apathetic of the bunch. We do what we do because it's good, interesting work that advances society as a whole, and it's nice to help people, but it's really hard to care about some of the problems people bring to you. Do you think a mental health wellness class at law school would benefit future lawyers in instilling good mental health, or at least prepare them for the stress, burnout, or anxiety in the profession? Yes, but I also think that a more systemic change needs to happen in the work culture of counselors. You can only do so much to stave off the inevitable. It's once the problems are accumulating that you need to manage them. Unfortunately, mental health issues are still fairly stigmatized in the United States, U.S., and firms are focused on profit, not employee care. Law offices aren't the place for touchy-feely approaches, but that can differ based on the firm. Story 19. I'm the same as you. Loved law school. Loved geeking out about legal theory with friends who are still some of my closest today. Some of the best times of my life. Went to big law and developed a serious depression. Moved to a small firm, and it was a little better for a while, but I made partner and the pressure came back. The hours, the responsibility of running a firm and making payroll, the fact that I was young and a bad manager, all of it put me in a bad place. Then I got an offer to work in a city government job doing labor law, and I took it, and I've loved it. My colleagues are kind and very smart. The work is much the same as it was, but I don't have a billable hours requirement anymore, and the end goal of making a better city for my fellow residents feels very meaningful. The pay is fine, but I'm in a good place now, and that's obviously worth a ton. I have other friends who found different but similarly effective paths toward legal contentment. Some went into in-house counsel roles, some are at firms crushing it as partner. Some took jobs in government or academia or out of law entirely. All are happier than when we started practicing. My long-winded point is that it definitely gets better as long as you don't settle for being unhappy. Try different situations: firm, in-house, government, big company, small company, etc. Try different colleagues. Mix it up until you find something that makes you feel that good exhaustion, like you just did a solid day's work. Story 20. I'm 5 years out of law school and have been increasingly struggling with these exact same thoughts every day. The actual tasks and day-to-day themselves are so incredibly boring and dry. I think a lot about how I'm wasting my life in my office by myself all day, constantly feeling chained to a computer. There's no real mental stimulation or fascination in it for me. I honestly preferred law school over practicing 100%, and it's actually led me to several periods of pretty bad depression. It's like law school was peak intellectual challenge, and then as soon as I graduated and started practicing, it was almost like a huge disappointment in comparison. I feel like I fed into a lot of false info about how it's all about investigating and solving puzzles, when it's not really. Story 21. I racked up parking tickets in law school, only to find out that the district had changed, but the signs were never removed. The street behind the school was in a different district one, with no time limit on parking. The neighbors didn't want students parking for hours on end, so they treated it as de facto timed parking. I defeated the tickets, but only after the contentious hearing where the hearing office asked me why I thought it was okay to park wherever I wanted despite the signs. I said the signs don't matter if they're not legal, and he said enforcement, meter maids, go by the signs, not the map. I asked if I could just put up signs wherever I wanted to not have people park and they would enforce it. He didn't have an answer for that one. It really bothered me that the school made a big deal about getting a dispensation on parking time during exams, because the exams were an hour longer than you could park. Story 22. As people have said, loopholes are rare, but this story jumps to mind. Wouldn't take much embellishment to make a dramatic TV moment. Convicted criminal was on furlough, a program with the jail where you can be released on an ankle monitor while still serving your sentence. He cut the monitor, ran, and was caught. Indicted for escape. Case gets to trial and the prosecutor puts on a pretty straightforward case. People from the jail and ankle monitor company and arresting cops testify. Then the defense moves to dismiss. Prosecution has failed to prove escape. There was actually a different law called unlawful evasion that applied to escaping off furlough program. This was extra confusing because escape is the correct charge for cutting an ankle monitor if you are serving your sentence on ankle monitor, which you can do sometimes. But if you start in jail and get out on an ankle monitor as part of a furlough program, then the crime is unlawful evasion. Prosecutor was furious. Because the defense could have dismissed the case at any point, arraignment up to trial, but he never said anything. So the guy sat in jail for months awaiting trial on a charge he could get dismissed. Judge ordered the case dismissed. If you feel unsafe with your thoughts, please seek professional help. This video does not promote illegal activity. Stories are shared for commentary and education.